Hi YouTube, it's Kathy, and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up for September 13th through 19th. This week I read 2 books, I watched 6 shows, I watched 1 movie, and I listened to 1 book. First this week, as a buddy read with my friend George, I read Loveless by Alice Oseman. I adore this writer, so I knew I was going to love this book even before I knew that it had an arrow ace protagonist. This book is about Georgia, and as we meet her, she's just about to go off to university, and she still at this point hasn't kissed a boy, and she comes across this chance to kiss the boy she said she's had a crush on for the last 7 years at a house party, and things go from there. What I love about this book and what I love about all of Alice Oseman's books is the banter and the friendships. Friendships are at the very heart of this book, and there's so many progressions that you would usually see as a romantic progression in other books in this book that are actually towards platonic friendships, and I just love that. Georgia is not perfect. She does mess up a bunch of things and threaten a lot of her friendships while she's figuring out who she is, but there's just so many amazing characters in this book that I just want to meet them and hang out with them, and it's lovely. This was also George's first ever buddy read, and I think I've got him hooked on it, and I'm very excited about that because buddy reading is amazing. My next book was Olympian Confessions, Hades and Persephone by Erin Kinsella. This is what it sounds like. It is a retelling of the Hades and Persephone. I don't know the Greek myths super well, so I don't know how true to the original stories this was, but it seemed like it probably pretty much was, and it is just a history of kind of the Greek mythos, but from the perspectives of Hades and Persephone. I thought that this was well crafted. I really enjoyed meeting these characters and all of these characters because so many of the Greek gods are mentioned. And obviously anything that has to do with Zeus is going to get dark at some points because that guy is an asshole. So there are trigger warnings for assault and rape in this book. I'm tempted to say that epics aren't my thing because on the one side I like getting to know all of these details about these characters, but they always seem way too long for me. And that has to be a me problem because epics are supposed to be long. I picked this up because I fell in love with Lore Olympus, which is a Hades and Persephone retelling, and I figured I just needed more Hades and Persephone in my life. If you have any recommendations about Hades and Persephone retellings, let me know down below. I have also listened to Hadesville, Hadestown, Hades, whichever one it is. I think it's Hadestown. And the music in that musical is wonderful. On to the shows I watched, the first one being a bunch of random episodes from the 5th season of Parks and Recreation. It is just a comfort watch. It's so easy to just toss on when all of us don't have the brain power to watch anything more intense and just enjoy. Especially because my roommate and I are now in the 7th season of Scandal, which means that we are seeing some very intense things. This is the section of the show that I've never seen before, or if I did, I blocked it out. So I'm really interested to see how this is going to wrap up in the next 10 episodes or so. Chad and I also finished the 3rd season of Ozark, which ends in a very shocking way, so it'll be interesting to see if and when the show continues, because lockdown obviously has put everything off its timelines. But yeah, I wasn't quite expecting that. And I also had some really big feels near the end of this season for reasons I can't talk about, so I needed all of the hugs. I also finished the 2nd season of Pose. This show is just fantastic. If you've never watched it, I highly recommend it. We did kind of fast forward a few months for the last episode of this season, which makes me wonder if maybe it's not getting renewed. I haven't looked this up at all, but if this is all we get, I'm glad that we got to tie up a couple of loose ends. We also watched a few random episodes of Community because again, it's just so easy to put on and you don't have to watch every episode, so you can go in and out of the room as you need, and it's just comforting. We also realized that 2 very random seasons of the UK version of Whose Line Is It Anyway is on Prime, so we watched at least one of those episodes. I think we only got through one before we moved on to other things, and it's like a blast from the past for me because I used to watch Whose Line like every day before going to school. That's actually my story of where I was when the Twin Towers were hit. I was watching Whose Line Is It Anyway. For the movie this week, I somewhat hoodwinked Chad into watching Rocketman with me. I just wanted to rewatch it because it's a fantastic biopic and I absolutely adore the performances and the cinematography and all of those things. But I say hoodwinked because he's not the biggest fan of musicals, and my brain didn't even think to warn him that it is pretty much a musical. We got in, he was like, oh my god, is this a musical? I'm like, oh yeah, sorry, we're watching it anyway, which is something I've done to him at least a couple of times in the past. I have zero regrets about that though, because this is a beautiful movie and I would watch it again and again and again. Finally, the book I listened to this week was Tristan Strong Punches a Hole in the Sky. This one is by Kwame Mbalia and it's part of the Rick Riordan Presents line, so it's talking about mythology that originated in Africa. Tristan comes from a line of boxers. His dad was a boxer, his grandpa was a boxer, and he doesn't do very well on his first fight, and it's decided that he's going to go hang out with his grandparents for a summer. That's more so to do with the fact that his best friend has recently passed away and he's dealing with the grief of that. And all he really has of his friend is this book they were working on together where they were collecting oral stories from the African diaspora. Lo and behold, he meets a character from one of these stories and it goes from there. This was a very fun concept and it leaves off in such an interesting way. I'm very excited to see how the end of the book translates into the rest of the series because it's such an interesting concept. There were a few characters in this that were very distinct, especially the way the audiobook narrator narrated them, but there were so many characters that I found myself forgetting kind of who was who. And I think that that's a me thing because I was trying to do things while listening, and if I'd been reading it on the page I would have known which character was which and what they looked like and that type of thing. This is a solid start to a middle grade series and I'm excited to see where it goes from here. That's it for this week. If you've read, watched, or listened to any of these, let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. If you don't feel like leaving a comment but want to make sure that I know you are here, just leave me an emoji or a smiley face if you're on your keyboard. A few people have asked if there's a way to financially support this channel, so I recently set up a Ko-fi account, which is a digital tipping service. That is linked down below, as well as my PayPal and my Amazon wishlist in case you want to send me a book. Somebody sent me Clap When You Land from my wish list, and I don't know who it was because there was no little slip of paper saying who it was from, so if it was you, thank you so much. I'm very much looking forward to reading it. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!